Psychologists, therapists, counselors, what are some things people tend to think are normal but should really be checked out? There have been a lot of my patients who have been pretty surprised when I've told them, hey, that's anxiety or depression, when they just thought their behaviors were typical for everyone. Not being able to maintain friendships, constantly being nervous about the safety of your child to the point where you hate being alone with your child without your partner, not being able to motivate yourself to do things, especially things you once enjoyed, feeling excessively tired all the time, not being able to calm down and just thinking about the same thoughts over and over and feeling worried. Other things we can help with: having a hard time trusting others, trying to recover a relationship from infidelity, not knowing why your kid is misbehaving so much and needing guidance, helping to improve communication within your relationships. If you experience these things and more, therapists can help. Let us help you. I've noticed the cost coming up. I hate that cost is such a barrier for people. Sometimes colleges offer free or discounted therapy from their students. When you're training to be a therapist, you spend at least 1 year working as a therapist while meeting with a supervisor each week to consult on your cases and get guidance on moving forward. The college unfortunately didn't offer discounted sessions, but I know many do. It might be worth checking out. Some systems also have charity care options for people with low incomes. That can be worth pursuing as well. To find a therapist, if you're in the US, you can call your insurance company and get a list of places that take your insurance. That's a good place to start. Story 2. Perfectionism. While a spectrum and everyone wants to do good work, an obsession with perfection is not something to be proud of and definitely not healthy. Healthy work ethic is doing your best and then letting go, as in recognizing no matter how much effort you put in, the result is, to some extent, out of your control, and that's okay. The intent and effort counts more than the end result. If you get obsessed with the end result, only you will hurt yourself because you never have full control over your end result, but you do have full control over the intensity and dedication you'll put in, even if that doesn't translate well. It is a fact of life sometimes things don't work out, so people who never, and I mean never, have anything less than flawless work all the time are paying for it somehow. Burnout or mental stress or overtime or medication to keep going or etc. It is pathological to want or think you can realistically have such control that your work is flawless all the time. God, I needed to hear this. Story 3. Extreme emotions, lack or struggle with impulse control, blackouts, extreme irritability, disrupted sleep, muted or bottled emotions, feeling like an alien, feeling like everyone has ulterior motive, self-isolation, preoccupation with pleasing others or avoiding conflict, feeling of emptiness, feeling like a part of your identity is missing or you don't have an identity of your own, subtle tendencies to latch onto others, especially romantic partners or crushes. Maybe sometimes you feel like you're just a tad too much, or maybe you've heard that from some exes. Went to school for forensic psych before I had to drop out due to my own unchecked mental illness. Turns out my worldview has been wrong my whole life, and I thought everyone was like this because my family members were like this. Even though I was in and out of therapy my whole life for depression and anxiety, nobody spotted the BPD because I didn't know these feelings needed to be talked about. Never caught the borderline until my head became such a dangerous place I wasn't sure I'd ever function again or be able to have the relationships I craved with my loved ones. Another example is my significant other. He's always had muted emotions, not a lot of expressed passion about the things he likes or believes are important, not even enough to vote before we got together. Most people with SPD will feel this detachment and think it's fine, but they can be really struggling and not know why or even not know that there's a problem, like heart disease. I won't lie that in some cases, having schizoid is almost encouraged, work of nearly every kind. However, it very seriously impacts the quality of life for the person, sometimes making them feel like they have no place in this world. Hint, everyone needs a therapist. There are no exceptions. Story 4. I'll turn this on a specific path. I'm a school psychologist. When your child is in school and having difficulty with learning, remembering, and applying the information consistently, everyone is expected to have challenging classes or subjects, but failing repeatedly despite significant efforts might need different support. Special education teachers can make magic happen. When your child's behavior requires constant monitoring, extensive reinforcement, is dangerous or difficult to predict, harmful to others, explosive, or highly disruptive on a frequent basis, the school will likely be contacting you and you need to work with them for the best interest of your child. We have behavior analysts. When your child does not seem to hear you when you call their name, not ignoring, or react to loud noises, get their hearing checked. Same thing for vision. Make sure you get it checked regularly. Glasses go to school. Hearing aids go to school. We have hearing and vision specialists that come into school. When your child has a hard time understanding you, following directions, responding with logical and connected thoughts, skipping key words, speech and language therapists do great things. We even use iPads and pictures to communicate with kids who need them, dressing themselves, handwriting, using scissors, sensory sensitivity, etc. That's what occupational therapy is for. Walking, climbing stairs, supporting their bodies in a chair, jumping, running, and any movement. That's what we call the physical therapist. Begging, dragging, pulling, and fighting your child to go to school every day is not normal. It could be that it's too difficult, socially challenging, high levels of anxiety or depression, and a plethora of other factors. Most importantly, all mental health issues are able to be helped in school. We have social workers, mental health counselors, psychologists, behavioral health workers, school and guidance counselors, social skills teachers, and more. We run groups, work on school avoidance, help build friendships, teach coping strategies, and calm kids down when they need it. Remember, the longer a kid avoids school, the harder it will be to get them back in. Don't give in, but get them in and plan with the school. Get outside help if the task is too great. Bullying is dangerous. Physical fighting is dangerous. Harming yourself is dangerous. Substance use is dangerous. The school needs to know in order to protect your child and family. We care and can help. Hiding or avoiding never helps. We have student assistance programs, outside resources, mobile crisis units, and an endless list of ways to support. Never, ever, ever leave a child with self-harm thoughts or intentions alone. When they say go directly to the hospital, go directly to the hospital. No matter what you think. People often look and act better right before they attempt because they feel relief that they're going to go through with it. I'm sure I'm missing things, but you get the gist. Not every school is amazing, but most have ways of helping that parents don't know about. Labels have good parts and bad parts, but we use them to identify, communicate, tailor interventions, and properly treat. Schools are not just for reading, writing, and math. They're community centers for all aspects of your life. You are your child's first teacher, and they're one for life. It's nice to know that there is help out there. Y'all should definitely listen. Story 5. Lack of regulation is something that crops up everywhere. Normal, or rather healthy or ideal, would be having a balance rather than extremes in your thoughts and behaviors. Taking something that others have mentioned, for example, can you regulate your emotions? Generally, people will think the obvious mental health implications if you manage with behaviors such as self-harm, alcoholism, substance use, but we also need to consider the normalized but still unhealthy behaviors such as work, intimacy, food, exercise, perfection. If it causes you to feel unhinged or out of control without it being a big focus in your life, then that may not be healthy. People often replace their problem behaviors and reassure themselves that it is all right because it isn't bad. Usually, the behavior itself is not bad. It is what you're getting from it at the expense of anything else that is bad, and yet we focus on the meaning we give the behavior. Interesting. Also, generally, people think this means, can you manage a disagreement without shouting, throwing something, swearing, making frustrated vocalizations, storming off, etc.? But it also means, without submitting to whatever the other person is saying even though you disagree, being unable to talk, being unable to move away, holding back from sharing your thoughts, etc. As a psychologist, we would also think about those core beliefs and rules for life that come to you in your moments of difficulty. Do you say, I can handle this, next time I will, or do you say, I'm an idiot, it was always going to go wrong, I knew this would happen because this is what always happens to me, I deserve this, I am unworthy or unlovable. This is so normalized but is not ideal or healthy and will leak out, and it doesn't have to. I suppose this isn't so much a real problem, but definitely seen as normal, and is an extremely common barrier to what would actually be healthy. As a psychologist, we're trained to identify the function and basic needs of behaviors in others and ourselves. I don't do or feel or think anything without knowing why before acting. If I think or feel or want to do something and I'm not sure what the meaning behind that is, I'll think about it first. Identify what my function or need is, and then figure out if that is the best way to go about it or if there's a better way. So many people are just feeling and doing without ever realizing what is going on underneath, without ever realizing that their instinctual behavior is not making them any better. Again, this often shows up when you behave in extremes rather than being regulated or balanced. Story 6. There are a lot of things people should work on, but the most important answer to this question is this. Needing psychological help is normal. Mental illness is normal. Wanting to talk through a rough stretch in life with a professional is normal. One of the biggest problems that we face in society today regarding mental health doesn't even have to do with our own mental state. It has to do with the negative perception society has of not having perfect mental health. If you think you would benefit from psychological help, at least do yourself the favor of giving it a try, in whatever form it may be. If anyone is going through something, always know that getting help is normal. There's nothing to be ashamed of. If you agree, then hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Let's go back to the video. Story 7. Therapist here. If you grew up with or currently are a part of a family where the whole family has to work or keep one or more members of the family in a good mood or appeased, that's not healthy. People are in charge of their own feelings. It is not your job to appease others so that they can emotionally regulate themselves. The don't rock the boat essay is a great analogy. Basically, this relative goes nuts and is rocking the boat. Everyone springs into action to counteract and steady the boat except for the married-in relative. Then everyone is mad at this married-in relative for not steadying the boat and how they're all going to tip over if that person doesn't help. The married-in helps his or her significant other, born into the family, into their own cozy little boat and there's no rocking. But the significant other is still trying to counteract the rocking by swaying and they need to learn to stop doing that. The other boat lost someone to help steady, so it's a bigger mess now, and the people steadying the boat are mad because married-in relative took away someone to help steady it. Rude. So the significant other starts to see how nice calm waters are. The relatives are freaking out and no one is questioning why the boat is rocking in the first place. Panic and survival is everything and is normal to them. Story 8. Psychotherapist here. Some things I see regularly that could have been caught earlier before they became a problem. And healthy coping mechanisms. For example, drinking to relax frequently or smoking a lot. Even something like promiscuity can be a red flag that a person is trying to avoid dealing with something stressful by distracting themselves. Harming yourself. It's time to talk with a professional. Normal child or teen behaviors that are not actually normal, like running away or getting into fights. Not communicating. When this happens, something is usually wrong. Not always, as some folks are quieter than others. But if a child or teen or adult rarely speaks or if they're silent in the presence of their parents or significant other, it's time to get them to see a professional alone, to have their safety assessed. I've seen individuals who are literally shut down due to having been profoundly mistreated by the people they live with, and one of the main signs of that is silence. I've also seen people in perfectly good homes who cannot communicate due to extreme anxiety, and without professional help, it's hard for them to overcome this. Mood swings. When a person's moods change from one extreme to another fairly often or regularly, that is another concerning symptom. Sometimes they're considered eccentric or hormonal, but that sort of thing can be a sign of many problems from bipolar disorder to post-traumatic stress disorder. Story 9. A good rule of thumb as to whether a behavior or symptom should be checked out is the same we use to determine a diagnosable disorder. If it causes impairment in one or more areas of life, the range of what is normal is huge, but if something keeps you from going to school or work, keeps you from maintaining basic hygiene, from maintaining your friendships or familial relationships, romantic relationships, it's causing impairment and you should seek help. To clarify a few things, this is not an exhausting criteria for diagnosable mental illness. There are many criteria we consider in diagnosing, but the one criteria that is present for all is that it must cause impairment. Enjoyment is also an important aspect of functioning. If you're getting by in your life but are miserable, get help. You don't have to live like that. Sociopaths represent a very small percentage of the population and rarely seek help willingly. This was not directed at them. The areas of functioning listed are general examples pulled from the Western culture where I live and was trained. Different cultures have different values, and the norms of your culture should be taken into account. If you're unbothered by a level of functioning in these areas relative to cultural expectations, good for you. Most people considering this advice likely have a sense that something is not where they want it to be in their life and are looking for confirmation that it's bad enough to seek help. If you're not concerned, my advice is not directed at you. No one is saying that being content with having no interpersonal connections is inherently pathological. No matter how small you think the problem is, it's still important to get it checked out. Story 10. I'm a very specific psychologist. I'm a research psychologist and my area is maternal-infant health. So I'm not sure how helpful this is, but we truly do not have a great understanding about what a physiologically normal postpartum mental health experience is versus a pathological one, except in the extreme end. So if you're having thoughts of harming yourself or others, including your baby, that is a pathological postpartum experience. I met with women who, when told they had PPD because they were looking forward to going back to work or were suggested to take medication because they reported feeling overwhelmed. I've also had women who were told it was normal to feel unmotivated, detached from the world or isolated for months after giving birth because that was just adjusting to motherhood. Perceptions of normal or not normal postpartum well-being vary wildly. This makes promoting postpartum well-being really difficult. So my advice is this. Some of the distress probably is normal. It's a huge life change, a huge physical toll, and a huge shift in hormones. But if that distressing is distressing to you, there are likely many different strategies for helping alleviate it, including medication when indicated. I would also say that postpartum anxiety is something that I actually tend to see are more commonly normalized or not diagnosed. Chronic, persistent, debilitating worry about your infant is not normal. But frankly, we have socialized it to be an indicator of good mothering, even if it decreases overall quality of life. Story 11. Tech here. So bottom of the totem pole, but I'll offer my opinion. Normal is not the right qualifier in my opinion. Psychology isn't like physiology where you can go in and they can run exploratory tests on you to find out if you're sick in a way that hasn't manifested symptoms yet. That's why your doctor will screen you for certain common or devastating disorders. The way I learned about mental illness was the 4 Ds. Dysfunction, deviation, distress, and danger. Dysfunction means it gets in the way of you doing your job, school, or whatever. Deviation means it's not something everyone is going through. Distress means you're not okay with it. Danger is self-explanatory. You come in with some or all of the 4 Ds and we form a treatment based on a set of symptoms that you most closely match. Then we treat the symptoms. The point of all this is to say, mental illness exists on a spectrum where one end may be so subtle that it only informs a person's personality, whereas the other end is completely debilitating and can get a person ended. You may know someone with features of an illness. In fact, I'd be surprised if you didn't. But if they don't want or need treatment, then they shouldn't be diagnosed. The best example is autism. Someone high in the functionality side of autism will do quite well in life. In fact, it is actually quite fair to discuss if autistic people live better lives than their counterparts. The answer would be entirely based on what you would value in a good life. The next group of people are objectively suffering from their condition. They may have a chemical imbalance in their brain that causes them to be more anxious or sad than their counterparts. However, if it doesn't have enough impact on that individual, then they may go their entire lives without really needing to be checked out. To answer your question, if someone feels like their life would benefit from the field of psychology, then they need to get checked out. The hurdle that professionals face is educating people on what kinds of things psychology can help with. But for fun, let's look at some qualities you can have that are too extreme and what diagnosis they may relate to. Energy, too much. Mania, too little, depression. Trust, too much, borderline personality disorder or BPD. Too little, paranoia, also BPD. Self-esteem, too much, equals narcissistic personality disorder. Too little, depression. Fear, too much, anxiety. Too little, mania. Activities of daily living. Too much equals OCD. Too little equals anhedonia, psychosis. Intimacy. Too much, BPD. Too little, anhedonia. Memory, too much equals trauma. Too little, dementia, Alzheimer's, or psychosis. Interaction, too much, hyperverbal. Too little, isolation, or catatonia. That is just to say that many different extremes of certain traits can be a symptom. However, you do have to make sure it is abnormal for that person. Not everyone who doesn't like people is clinically isolative. Not everyone who doesn't brush their teeth is depressed. It takes no time at all to learn the symptoms of different disorders. The rest of the time at school will be spent finding out how to tell if those traits are a symptom or just who that person is, and of course what to do about it. Often the question of why is important in mental illness. Not participating in something you used to love may be anhedonia, or you may just have lost interest. Your medical doctor should never have to ask you why you have swollen lymph nodes. Your therapist should absolutely ask you why you want to get a divorce. He cheated on me. He's not a symptom, but he's not my husband anymore. He's an imposter that looks like my husband, but he's a spy sent to end me. Is, most likely. Story 12. If how you're feeling is causing you distress, go see someone. If you feel ashamed or embarrassed, like you're failing, wish you didn't exist, abnormal or out of control, a normal and healthy emotional response should be balanced and rational. If you find yourself exploding over little things or spiraling, linking a long string of negative thoughts together, then therapy can help. Equally, if nothing bothers you and you don't react logically to things, then you should also see someone. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.